3:41 p.m. local time. The Caribbean Sea lies still, almost unnervingly calm. From the flight deck of a U.S. aircraft carrier moving through international waters, the horizon appears empty. Blue water, clear skies, standard operations. To an untrained observer, there is no obvious sign of trouble. But at sea, danger is rarely measured by what can be seen. It is measured by what the sensors reveal. Deep inside the ship, in the Combat Information Center, radar displays glow with a steady pulse. Tracks move in familiar patterns. Civilian air traffic, distant weather echoes. Everything looks routine until the picture changes. A fresh group of contacts appears high above. Fast, clean, military signatures. 5 of them. The watch officer leans in. Speed readings jump. Altitude begins to drop. These are not civilian aircraft. These are fighter jets approaching quickly from the south. The captain is informed at once. No shouting, no alarm, just recognition. The carrier stays on course. It has no reason to flinch. This ship is not operating by itself. The carrier sits at the heart of a tightly connected strike group. Destroyers, cruisers, submarines, airborne surveillance, and satellite support all feed into one shared network. Every mile of surrounding airspace is under watch. Every signal is tracked. Every movement is measured. The approaching aircraft are identified without delay. Venezuelan Air Force F-16S older jets, only modestly upgraded, still kept mission ready through careful upkeep and practical workarounds. On paper, they remain Venezuela's strongest fighter platform. In practice, they represent something larger than raw capability. They are symbols. For Caracas, these aircraft serve not only military purposes, but political ones as well. Images of defiance, endurance, and presence. In recent weeks, tension across the Caribbean has been quietly building. U.S. naval activity has increased. Drug interdiction efforts have intensified. Smuggling corridors once treated as dependable have started to close. Every move has remained lawful. Every signal has been easy to understand. Venezuela has been paying attention. Military analysts know this pattern well. When a smaller power cannot equal an opponent's strength, it often tries to narrow the distance. Close flyovers, sharp turns, bold approaches meant to trigger a response and attract attention. But the U.S. Navy does not act on impulse. It acts on procedure. As the 5 F-16S continue inbound, the carrier strike group remains steady. No fighters are launched, no abrupt course changes, no overreaction. Everything is recorded, everything is monitored. On the flight deck, sailors pause and glance upward. This is not unfamiliar territory for them. What shows on their faces is not fear, but professional interest. Beneath their feet is a warship weighing more than 100,000 tons, built to withstand both physical pressure and political theater. Inside the CIC, information keeps pouring in. Radar returns, speed profiles, altitude changes, electronic emissions. The fighters are active now. Radar's on, radio's live, engines pushed harder as the descent continues. Every signal adds another layer to the story. And with every mile they close, that story becomes clearer. What the pilots in those cockpits may see as a show of force looks very different from the carrier's perspective. To the strike group, it is a stream of valuable data, patterns, frequencies, reactions, behavior under pressure. The kind of information no exercise can fully reproduce and no budget can simply purchase. The Venezuelan jets keep dropping lower. This is not a distant pass. It is deliberate, assertive, carefully calculated. And still the carrier holds its line. This is the kind of moment where mistakes begin, where one choice can suddenly reshape everything. One aircraft strays a few degrees too far. One radar lock is read the wrong way. One pilot mistakes restraint for uncertainty. But the U.S. Navy has learned the same lesson over decades of global operations. Escalation rewards the impatient. As the gap closes, the atmosphere changes. The airspace around the carrier is no longer open and empty. It is filled with intent, risk, and an array of cameras and sensors capturing every second. 5 jets, 1 carrier, only moments from whatever comes next. And without realizing it, the Venezuelan pilots have already entered the most important phase of the encounter. The first jet breaks formation. On radar, the shift is immediate. One contact accelerates, nose angled down. Altitude falls rapidly. Then a second follows, then another. Within seconds, all 5 Venezuelan F-16S leave their level approach and roll into a steep descent. This is no routine flyby. Inside the Combat Information Center, the symbols on the displays change color. Speed vectors stretch longer. Closure rates rise. The systems do not guess. They calculate. And the numbers leave little doubt. These aircraft are diving straight toward the carrier group. On the bridge, the view ahead still looks almost peaceful. Calm sea, open sky. But overhead, the sound begins to build. Faint at first, then impossible to miss. A growing roar from jet engines driven well beyond cruise power. Flight deck crews tilt their heads upward as dark shapes tear across the sky. The F-16 Fighting Falcon remains a fast aircraft even by modern standards. Light, nimble, built for hard maneuvering, and in this moment, those pilots are drawing on all of it. Afterburners ignite, heat signatures spike, the fighters cut downward through the air at high speed. From inside the Venezuelan cockpits, the maneuver likely feels bold and commanding, a tight, dramatic approach, the kind designed to force a reaction, but the carrier doesn't give one. No alarms echo across the deck, no scramble command is issued. The ship doesn't turn toward the incoming jets, and it doesn't turn away. It simply continues on its planned course and speed, unchanged. Because long before those aircraft were visible to the human eye, they were already being tracked. Inside the ship's layered defense network, everything is active, but controlled. Long-range radar continues scanning the sky. Passive sensors remain tuned in. Electronic warfare systems quietly log incoming signals without revealing their own presence. This isn't a moment for noise, it's a moment for precision. As the jets descend, they begin to spread out, drifting into position for a calculated pass. One lines up toward the bow, two slide off to the starboard side. The remaining pair hang slightly higher, observing. A textbook intimidation pattern. The closest jet cuts across the flight deck, low enough for sailors to clearly make out its markings. Fast, loud, intentional. The air shudders as it passes, a move meant to own the moment. But control is what defines dominance, and that's where things begin to shift. Every radar sweep from those jets is being captured, every transmission recorded, every change in engine output, every slight adjustment in altitude, every movement guided by human hands under pressure. It's all being collected. The descent continues. One jet dips lower than the others, slicing beneath its wingman. For a brief instant, the geometry tightens. The margin for error shrinks. At these speeds, even a small miscalculation can turn serious. Still, the carrier does nothing. This isn't hesitation, it's discipline. The U.S. Navy operates under clear rules of engagement, but those rules are built around strategy. Force is not the first option, it's the final one, especially when the real goal is to prevent escalation while maintaining the upper hand. And that advantage is increasing with every second. The Venezuelan pilots may feel like they're applying pressure, but from the carrier's perspective, they're revealing everything. Tactics, limits, reliance on visual presence instead of coordinated precision. As the jets pull out of their dives and begin to climb, the formation loosens. The pass didn't trigger what they expected. No abrupt maneuvers, no visible escalation, no radio challenge cutting through the air, just silence. And that silence carries its own message. For the pilots, it introduces doubt. Was the signal received? Did it have any impact? Or did they misjudge the entire situation? As the F-16 climb away, the carrier remains exactly as it was. Steady, massive, unaffected. But beneath that calm surface, everything has already changed. What started as a bold display has quietly turned into something far more significant. Because the dive is over, and everything that happened during it now belongs to the United States Navy. By the time the jets begin their climb, the most critical phase of the encounter has already passed. No explosions, no launches, no alarms cutting through the deck. To someone watching from the outside, it might seem like nothing happened at all. That would be a mistake. Inside the strike group's network, the airspace is filled with information. Every moment of that descent has been captured, sorted, and stored. Not as footage, not as spectacle, but as raw data. Modern naval operations aren't decided by who gets closest. They're decided by who reveals the most. And during that dive, the F-16s revealed a lot. Their systems were active. Fire control radars swept the area. Navigation systems adjusted in real time. Radios carried cockpit coordination and communication with controllers. Engine output shifted as afterburners engaged, producing strong infrared signatures against the cooler Caribbean air. Each of those actions leaves behind a trace. The carrier doesn't need to announce itself to detect them. Passive systems quietly absorb radar patterns. Electronic support measures break down frequencies, timing intervals, modulation details. Every signal is compared to existing databases and refined on the fly. This isn't just observation, it's understanding. Because every aircraft carries a unique signature, and once it's recorded, it can be recognized again. The way its radar behaves under pressure, the tone of a pilot's voice during aggressive maneuvering, the subtle changes in engine performance when pushed hard at low altitude. The Venezuelan pilots believe they are demonstrating strength. In reality, they are transmitting it. And the closer they move in, the clearer that signal becomes. One jet's radar briefly spikes as it tries to refine distance. Another makes a sharper than necessary altitude correction, reacting to turbulence near the surface. A third falls just half a second behind during the pull-up. Small details, human details, but outcomes are often decided in those exact margins. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts begin to see patterns take shape. This isn't their first time observing Venezuelan aircraft, but it is the most complete picture they've gathered. Training flights don't recreate real pressure. Exercises don't fully capture uncertainty. Moments like this do. The stream of data coming in now is the kind that can't be bought or predicted. It has to be experienced. And right now, it's being handed over in real time. As the fighters begin climbing away, their emissions start to fade. Radar modes shift. Radio chatter quiets. The display is ending, but the exchange has already happened. The carrier never needed to respond with force because that was never the objective. The goal was clarity. In naval doctrine, there's a concept that predates modern systems yet still defines them: escalation dominance. The ability to control the pace of an encounter without making that control obvious. The Venezuelan pilots approached fast, loud, and close. They created proximity. They demanded attention. What they didn't create was fear. The carrier strike group didn't react because it didn't need to. It had already gained something more valuable than a visible response. It had learned. From this point forward, those F-16S are no longer unknown variables. Their behavior under pressure is documented. Their system characteristics refined. Their tactics observed in real conditions. If they appear again, closer, louder, or in a different situation, the Navy won't be encountering them for the first time. It will be the second. And in any military interaction, the second meeting favors the side that paid attention the first time. As the final jet disappears into the distance, the Caribbean sky settles back into calm blue. On deck, crews return to their tasks. Signals are given. Operations continue as if nothing unusual occurred. To a casual observer, it looks like restraint. To professionals, it looks like a quiet win. Because sometimes the most decisive moment isn't when action is taken. It's when one side realizes, too late, that it has already revealed everything. As the Venezuelan F-16s climb away, the airspace above the carrier clears quickly, almost abruptly. No pursuit follows. No American aircraft launch from the deck. The strike group doesn't tighten formation or broadcast warnings across open channels. It does exactly what it has done since the first radar contact appeared. It remains steady. From the outside, that kind of response can be misunderstood. To those unfamiliar with naval operations, silence can look like hesitation. Stillness can feel like uncertainty. Inside the strike group, it means the opposite. The U.S. Navy's response to pressure isn't driven by emotion. It's built on control of space, control of information, and most importantly, control of escalation. Even as the jets pull away, sensors continue tracking them until they move beyond effective range. Every change in heading is recorded. Every reduction in speed is noted. The encounter doesn't end when the aircraft leave. It ends when the DATS stops. On the bridge, the captain reviews incoming reports. There's no debate about whether to respond with force. That decision was made long before the jets ever appeared. The rules of engagement are clear, but the thinking behind them goes deeper. You don't escalate when escalation benefits the other side. For Venezuela, the objective was straightforward: provoke a response, capture attention, shape a narrative, turn proximity into messaging. The Navy gives them none of it. No dramatic footage of jets launching, no heated radio exchanges, no visible shift into a posture that could be clipped, edited, and shared. Instead, there's only the image of 5 aircraft passing a ship that never reacted. And that absence is intentional. Within the strike group, systems remain active but understated. Air assets remain on standby beyond the horizon. Subsurface elements continue their quiet watch. At no point is the carrier vulnerable. It simply chooses not to advertise its readiness. This approach reflects decades of experience. From Cold War standoffs to modern low-intensity confrontations, one lesson has remained consistent. Visible reactions often reward provocation. Silence, on the other hand, shifts the pressure back. Now, as the Venezuelan pilots head home, a different question begins to take shape. Did it work? They approached aggressively. They made themselves seen and heard, and yet the target never altered course, never responded, never acknowledged them in the way they expected. From a military perspective, that's an uncomfortable outcome, because when a force capable of dominating the air chooses not to demonstrate it, it suggests something deeper than restraint. It suggests confidence, preparation, the understanding that escalation is a decision, never a reflex. Back aboard the carrier, operations continue on schedule. Aircraft are positioned. Fuel lines are inspected. Maintenance crews move across the deck with the same practice precision they showed before the encounter began. Nothing changes, and that, by itself, is the message. The Navy does not need to prove its presence by reacting to every provocation. Its presence is already understood. Its capability is already known. Its restraint is deliberate. In strategic terms, this is escalation control at its highest level. The ability to absorb pressure without mirroring it, to let the other side spend its energy while you keep the initiative. The Venezuelan jets are gone now, but their choice to approach, to dive, to provoke has not been dismissed. It has been absorbed, evaluated, and filed into something larger. And when naval professionals say an action has been processed, they mean it has been folded into planning, readiness, and future decisions that may never be publicly discussed. So the encounter ends not with a warning shot or a chase, but with a quiet entry in logs, reports, and databases. The U.S. Navy did not fire. It never had to. Because in this confrontation, silence was not an absence of power. It was proof of it. By nightfall, the Caribbean looks exactly as it did before. Calm water, open sky, commercial traffic moving through international waters without interruption. To anyone watching from a distance, the tension of the afternoon leaves no visible mark. No wreckage, no smoke, no dramatic image frozen in time, but naval encounters are rarely judged by what the sea looks like afterward. They are judged by what changed beneath the surface. Inside the carrier strike group, the day's events are already shifting from live tracking to long-term analysis. The information gathered during the dive is being reviewed, compared, and distributed across command networks. Radar signatures are sharpened, communication patterns are logged, tactical behavior is studied without drama and without exaggeration. This is how modern naval power builds on itself. The Venezuelan pilots returned to base believing they completed their mission. They flew close, they forced proximity, they showed resolve. On paper, the sortie may be recorded as a successful display of presence. But presence alone does not change the balance. What they cannot see is what happens on the other side of the encounter. From this moment on, those aircraft are no longer theoretical threats. They are known quantities, their reaction times, their formation discipline, their system behavior under pressure. All of it now exists as reference material for future planning. And that kind of knowledge does not fade quickly. In the days that follow, U.S. operations in the region continue without visible change. The carrier remains on station. Patrol routes stay consistent. There is no sudden surge meant to advertise dominance and no reduction meant to suggest withdrawal. That consistency is intentional. Strategic messaging does not always arrive in the form of force. Sometimes it arrives through continuity. The message is simple. Nothing you did changed our mission. For Venezuela's leadership, that is a difficult result to shape into a convincing narrative. Provocations are meant to create reaction. When no visible reaction comes, the story loses momentum. The question stops being, did we challenge them? It becomes, why didn't they respond? And that question matters. Because a force that does not react in public is often a force that simply does not need to. Military history is filled with moments when escalation seemed inevitable, right up until one side chose restraint and, by doing so, denied the other side its objective. This encounter belongs in that category. No clash followed, no retaliation was required, yet the balance still shifted, quietly but unmistakably. Not because of intimidation, because of discipline. The carrier strike group demonstrated something more powerful than aggression: control. Control of sensors, control of information, control of timing, and ultimately control of the story itself. The Venezuelan jets dived towards steel and silence, expecting acknowledgement. What they received instead was analysis. That difference matters. In future encounters, whether days, months, or years from now, the Navy will remember this flight. The data collected here will shape choices that may never be visible to the public. And the pilots involved may never fully know how much they revealed in those few seconds above the Caribbean. But naval professionals understand the lesson clearly. Power is not always measured by what you do in the moment. Sometimes it is measured by what you gain without acting at all. As the carrier continues its patrol, the lesson from that day settles into doctrine, exactly where it belongs. Provocation does not require a response. Noise does not create leverage. And restraint, when backed by unquestioned capability, is not weakness. It is dominance. 5 jets dived toward an American aircraft carrier, hoping to make a statement. What happened instead was quieter and far more decisive.